One of the really interesting things in this instrument, the OBX8, is the fact that on one hand, a quick glance at it, and it looks like many machines that have come before, both Oberheim and Sequential and possibly others. But this represents what I consider not only is it the present, but the future, in that we're taking the basic concept of analog synthesis, which have been explored for now 30, 40 years, and refining it, combining different features, but it's a new machine. It's a new machine doing things like an old machine, you might say, but there's a synergy there that I think we'll find as musicians start to use this machine, they'll find combinations that we've never thought of. And so that's a very exciting part for me.
And I have to say it was a really fun project for us, engineering project, to actually combine the circuitry from all three of those products into one and make it a incredibly faithful reproduction of what we had back then. It took a lot of work, but we had the right team. The people who did this originally helped, so we knew we had it right. And it came out so well that we put all the patches from back then, from all three instruments, into the OBX8. Wow. So I think it turned out really well.
That's fabulous.
And switching between the Oberheim world of sound and the Sequential world of sound, it was a kind of a funny way to go, for me, to go back into the Oberheim way after being with Sequential for a decade and really get back to the roots of what these instruments are and how they behave. You know, the X was so raw compared to everything that's come after it. And, you know, to try to capture that in this instrument was a task, and I think we did a good job at it.
The interesting thing is back in those days, you know, the products we were making at Oberheim, the products at Sequential, we were using the same components for the most part. You know, the basic thought process of the foundation of analog synthesis was the same, but it's like different painters can be using the same paints, but you end up with different pictures, and being able to revisit how some of the very subtle differences of component choices, of signal routing, and things like that can have real profound differences, which has led to why Oberheim has had its signature sound and Sequential's had its signature sound. And being able to have all three of those, basically every feature of all three of them, all combined into one instrument is really an exciting product to inspire new music.
Definitely, and I had to learn all about these things since I was on the other side of the Sequential versus Oberheim thing in the 79 and 1980, and so this was all new to me. I had no idea how these things worked inside, so it was very interesting to get in there and look in detail, especially after just doing the Prophet 5 Rev 4 a year and a half ago.
The Oberheim sound started with the SCM module, which we sold and started selling in 1975. Then later on, when we were looking at making an integrated keyboard product, we used the SCM circuitry for the OBX. Then another development was I met an engineer named Doug Curtis, who had expertise in designing analog chips, and he came up with a set of analog chips that we were able to make a complete synthesizer out of, and we used those in the OBX-A, and then later also in the OB8.
Right, and what was really interesting back then is, of course, we had the two camps. We had the Oberheim camp and the Sequential camp, and at one point, we both were using the same Curtis parts in our instruments.
That's right.
And yet, they sounded completely different.
Completely different.
And it's kind of a reminder. I think we all missed this back then, but all these instruments have their own personality. It almost doesn't matter what's in them. It's how it feels, how it sounds. And it was so much fun in the new product to capture both that original SEM and the Curtis chip sound from the OBX-A and the OB8 that is different from the Rev 3 Curtis sound and the Prophet 5s.
It's a great accomplishment, that's for sure.
Yeah, it was pretty fun project. And to hear it when we're done and going, yeah, this thing sounds like it should.
We added so much more that none of the originals had, which complement this modern instrument, but doesn't make it, cluttered like a modern workstation. It's still very clean and very approachable like the old ones were.
Well, what I love as well is that, honoring the fact that the OBX really is the SEM, it's kind of hidden inside, but the original OBX just did the low-pass filter of the SEM. So it was a little cut down from the original SEM. And here in the OBX8,
Back.
put back the high pass and the band pass and the notch. You have all the filter modes of an original SEM. So it's like we're almost selling it short to say it's an OBX8 OB8 because it's an 8 voice and an OBX, an OBXA, an OB8 all in one.
That's right. We got all 4 now. The engineering design process was quite interesting. We had to first go out and get one each, well, more than one each of the old instruments. So we got an OBX, we got an OBXA, we got an OB8. We had them all spread out in different locations because we had to match these exactly. And you can't do it unless you have the real thing right there. So at every point in the design, we'd be hit a note here in the new one, hit a note in one of the old ones, listen to them. Does it sound the same? Is it close? Well, not quite. And we just keep working and working until we got every part of the sound to be almost exact or exact. I shouldn't say almost because I think we pretty much nailed it. And the other cool thing was we had just done that the year before for the Prophet 5. We got the Rev 1s, the Rev 2s, the Rev 3s. We had them all spread out. And we did exactly the same thing. And we learned a lot from that process that we were able to carry over into this project, which it made a huge difference. But it was, in both cases, it was just a lot of fun to go back and make it work.
Another common thread there is that, you doing the Prophet 5, you bring all the knowledge you had of from its origin to today, what makes a Prophet 5 special, which isn't going to be obvious just in the schematics. It's like, you can see a piece of sheet music and say, here's what the composer meant, but the music doesn't convey, the sheet music doesn't convey everything of what that piece represents. And there's so much that goes on inside these instruments. So being able to have the original instruments, some of the original designers, and some of the extended team, Michel Douadic helped out with some stuff, where he was back in the original days. And, this really captures all those pieces because we had, key people that were there, as well as the sheet music and the software and everything else to be able to bring to life truly those original instruments with the pure analog audio path, just like the good old days, and have it all in a modern instrument anyone can use. What's fun is if someone's a tried and true OB8 user that, loves the hidden feature of hold the chord button so you can hit where your split point of the chord feature will be and things like that. The hidden feature modes are still there. But for everyone else, you can just see it in the display. Oh, split point. It just says it in the display, which is just a great addition. We couldn't, back in 1983, putting a display on a synthesizer was
They
a
were
little
too expensive.
a little tricky, yeah. That was really just the very beginning of displays, so it's a nice addition here.
Yeah, we have the programmable pan. Remember in the old
Oh,
ones,
yeah.
you had to go turn all those
On the
little
side.
knobs. Now it's just all there. You press a button and you can ping pong. You can do whatever you want with those. The levels, the keyboard modes, there's just a lot of fun stuff. So it's like OBXA to OB8 and now OB8 to OBX8. They're all big jumps in functionality.
All the hidden magic of an OB8 doesn't have to be hidden anymore.
No more hidden. Yeah, I can never find them. Wait, how do you do that? But that's all still there.
It's
You can
all still there,
If you
too.
have the old muscle memory of hold this and turn that, it'll still work like your original.
That's
But for most of us, we have to use the display.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's great to have that display. Unfortunately, in 1979, 1980, those didn't exist. The difference that I am happy to see in the OBX8 is the addition of velocity and pressure sensitive aftertouch. The keyboard mechanisms that we could buy in the 70s and early 80s that just didn't allow that. The goodies inside the keyboard was just not there, but now it's possible. And so it's really nice to have that. And you combine those features with different OBX, OBXA, OB8 combinations, it gets really interesting.
And we also borrowed something from the new Prophet 5 where we added the vintage knob, which it just works really cool because as we all know, the older the instruments are, the sloppier the parameters are. They're all over the place. But these days, a lot of people in a more modern sound, they want things to be a little tighter. So we put the vintage knob in there so you can dial it from basically from tight to loose. I mean, I
think
don't know
that's
how
a
else
great
to say
idea.
it.
I love that one.
It just really brings back the vintage
Yeah.
vibe of the old instruments. We did other things like now the pan is programmable instead of having a bunch of knobs you have to turn. So it could be different on every preset, which is a lot of fun when you're playing live. The bend box is the same thing. That used to be live only. Well, now it's part of a program if you want it to
Yeah,
be.
yeah.
So, and then there's just a ton of other little things that we put into page 2 that weren't on the originals. So it's just all fun stuff.
Yeah,
It
fabulous stuff.
extends the instrument's voice significantly.
Yeah.
I think another important addition is because we have all this extra capability is memory back in the day was really expensive.
Oh, yeah.
The OBX was 32 presets. That's all you got. And we got the bright idea after the OBXA was launched to expand it to 120, which was, that was a big deal at the time. But now it's like there's so much capability here. Of course, now memory is no longer a limitation. So being able to have all of the factory banks of all the originals and plenty of room to store all the sounds you want to make. So when if you want to add velocity to your favorite OBXA preset, you can do that and save it. Kind of an obvious but really important addition that you kind of really missed on the originals.
It's amazing how something as simple as putting a headphone jack on the front of the instrument, just like, you don't even think about things like that these days, and all of a sudden it's there, and it just works, and it's so handy. Little things can go a long ways in these instruments.
Yeah, you don't think about it until you want to plug your headphone in. Where? Oh, this is horrible.
I thought about it a lot on the originals, and it really frustrated me that there's no headphone jack.
When you look at what might be in the future for Oberheim products, I suppose one thing you could do is look through what's been done before by Oberheim and think, well, how does that going to apply? I mean, we can look at some of the old Oberheims and say, well, applying this kind of technology, I think the future is very bright for this. With Dave and his team and Marcus and Tony and the other people that work on this, I think that we've got a fertile field here for all kinds of interesting things. You may see a machine come out that looks pretty much like something before, but then when you start to examine it and explore, it'll be very exciting.
And there's so many different directions we can go. We have some ideas for new instruments that would be clearly an Oberheim instrument, but not necessarily, like this, a copy of something old. There's no reason we have to limit ourselves to only building old stuff, rebuilding old stuff. We can do new things. Analog synthesis has been around, since the 60s. It's passed the test of time as far as I'm concerned.
That's right.
And there's so much we could still do, combining modern technology, knowing what to keep from the old technology, staying the analog signal path, all of that. We're just starting. This is going to be great.